Financial independence and retiring early, or FIRE, is something that I've been working towards for a few years now. For the most part, I have been following straightforward, tried and true basics. This strategy has worked pretty well so far, and honestly, I love the simplicity. But lately, I have been wondering, what if everything we assume about FIRE is going to change? What if the 4% rule, the career timeline, or the basic idea of what retirement can look like no longer makes sense as AI changes the economy? If we haven't met yet, hello, I am Lydia, and I am a pharmacist / real estate investor / I guess YouTuber now. My point in this video is not to fearmonger or sell you some magical course that can fix all of your financial planning. I just know a lot of us are quietly wrestling with the same questions. So let's have a conversation about it. Let's explore what's our base case, what might change, how might we adapt, and what can we do to keep our options open. Part 1, let's start with a FIRE refresher. For those who are new to the concept of FIRE, the basic math is pretty simple. You save 25 times your annual expenses to hit your FIRE number. For example, if your annual expenses at retirement, adjusted for inflation, is $60,000, then your FIRE number is 25 times that, which is 1.5 million. If your annual expenses is higher at 100K, then your FIRE number is also higher at $2.5 million. At that point, when you reach this target number, you can then safely withdraw 4% of your portfolio every single year. You may have heard of this as the 4% rule or safe withdrawal rate. In theory, your investment continues to grow to replace that bit that you withdrew, aka you basically never run out of money. There are a few variants within the FIRE community. There's fat FIRE, lean FIRE, barista FIRE. Don't worry about the labels if this is new to you. This is mainly helpful for consuming FIRE content and talking to FIRE community enthusiasts. And more often than not, the labels are kind of loosely defined anyway. If I had to pick a label, my personal approach has been closest to the CoastFIRE mentality, whereby you more aggressively invest upfront and let time and compounding of that initial sum do the bulk of the work. And then as you move into kind of the mid-career age range, you get to coast and you have options. Options to take the foot off the pedal of investing because you know your previous hard work will continue to grow over time and to become your retirement nest egg. Options to scale back from work and spend time with kids and go travel, do things you like. Options to have a midlife crisis, to take a pause, take a sabbatical, switch careers, try out a new passion. Because at that point, you would have already taken care of the financial piece of your retirement. What you do today only needs to fund your day-to-day expenses. To figure out your numbers, if you're interested specifically in CoastFIRE, decide what age you really want to retire, say 55, 60, 65, and how much you would need at that point. For example, if you want to officially never work again and retire at age 60, and you think you'll need $80,000 of expenses every year at that point, 80,000 times 25 is $2 million. To have $2 million at age 60, you then work backwards using an investment calculator. You could aim for $500,000 invested at age 40, because if you do hit that number from age 40 onward, you can officially coast and never invest a single extra dollar again. Or if you're 30 and you have $250,000 invested already, same thing. You could stop investing based on historical averages, and your money would still grow into that $2 million that you need at age 60. This target is called a coast number or CoastFIRE number. Think of it just as an additional milestone earlier in your investing journey before retirement. This appeals to people because it's not about racing to this FIRE number and then do nothing and live life after. It's about knowing when I have enough invested so that I can start reaping the benefits, the feeling, the security of financial freedom sooner. Because let's be serious, who wants to work and save money forever? We all want that freedom and optionality and security sooner rather than later. And realistically, I'm not looking to fully retire and sit around at age 40 anyway. I'd be happy to continue being productive and making money. I just don't want to be tied to a specific set of options. Anyway, regardless of which type of FIRE you're targeting, whether you're making $50,000 or $500,000 a year, the principles scale. Higher income just allows you to reach your goal faster. This has worked well for so many people, and there is no shortage of case studies. But will it continue to work well? And that's kind of where I'm starting to have questions. To be completely clear, I am not saying FIRE is broken or that I'm abandoning the basics of living within means and dollar cost averaging into low cost index funds and utilizing tax advantage investment accounts. And if you're just getting started with FIRE, please don't let this overwhelm you. Those basics are still solid. If I were just starting my career today and just starting to invest, these are the things I would still start right away. The core strategies I think still make sense, but some of the underlying assumptions may need a little bit of updating. Think of this more as long-term adaptations once you're already on that path. With that out of the way, let's dive into part 2, which are the cracks I see in the foundation. The biggest one I feel like is the historical returns assumption. The 4% rule assumes, on average, historical market returns taken from the 1920s to the 2020s. And throughout that 100-year time frame, we've seen plenty of ups and downs and variation. That part does not worry me. But so many things can challenge that assumption that the past 100 years is indicative of what is to come next. What if AI fundamentally changes how value is created? Some sectors may be completely obsolete. Some bubbles might burst. AI could also create a winner-takes-all situation where returns are concentrated in just a handful of companies. Even though we've seen plenty of volatile times before and things eventually smoothed out in the long run, in those times, the US markets maintained a level of market dominance that we can't say for sure will continue in the next 20, 30 years. During that historical time frame, we also didn't have a lot of the trading being done algorithmically or half of the managed assets being concentrated in passive index funds. Does that change things? I don't know, but I think it'd be arrogant to not at least consider the possibility that it might. The second big question I have is a disruption to the career timeline. FIRE assumes you can work a consistent job for, I don't know, like 20, 30 years, depending on your income, depending on how frugal you are. But what if the changes in society and AI compresses that timeline? Using my own job as a clinical pharmacist as an example, I feel pretty good about it today, still having an edge over AI technologies. I think as of now, the risk of an error in a medical situation is just far too great. Like, we don't want to harm actual people and have bad outcomes. And so the system is going to continue to require multiple layers of machine and human interacting together to prevent those errors. While AI can look up a lot of drug information and screen for drug interactions and whatnot, it's not quite there with accuracy. A lot of times when I use AI to test this out, it's just giving way too confident of answers that are completely wrong. And B, it's not as good as I think I am at just gauging how much a provider wants to hear, needs to hear, reading the room, and giving a concise answer or recommendation at the right time. If you're in healthcare, you are familiar with alert fatigue, a computer system being very thorough and flagging every single thing, big and small. It's not as effective because, let's be serious, we're gonna all just bypass all the flags. So from a job security standpoint, I am not too worried right now, but I'm definitely not advising my own kids to go into that profession. I don't think we would still have the same setup in 20 years. So how long do we have? 10 years? 5 years? It all depends how quickly technology can be developed, how many legal boundaries will be put in place to ensure something is safe, and decide what is allowed to be technology only versus technology plus human. And that piece often ties into how much lobbying there is. In other words, completely beyond my control. Yeah, there will be ways to pivot, but nothing is guaranteed. Outside of healthcare, there are fields that AI is changing more rapidly. Think customer service, design, administrative work. The question isn't whether your job will change between now and retirement. It's how much, how quickly, how dramatically, and whether it'll be to your liking. And ultimately, from the FIRE standpoint, how this affects your earning years where you could invest. Number 3, let's talk about expense predictability. Another big assumption of FIRE is trying to predict your expenses 20, 30 years out. As you can imagine, this is tricky at baseline, but I think even trickier now. We're already seeing everything move into subscription models: music, movies, entertainment, software, housing, transportation. Who's to say this won't accelerate into food and other basic services? Also, things we consider valuable and premium in society today may look completely different in the future. There may be completely new expense categories we haven't thought of. Layer that on top of inflation possibly not following historical patterns, and a slow shift in the dollar's purchasing power. And if you have kids, will higher ed be more important, less important, probably more expensive? What does it look like to set them up for success in the future? Should I be budgeting more for, I don't know, like multiple career pivots on their end, or specific extracurriculars or training? I don't even know what I don't know. I know this can sound like I'm overcomplicating things, like I'm not even retired yet. Why am I thinking of my children going to work? But if you're a fellow parent, you know that feeling of just wanting the absolute best for your kids. And what wouldn't you do, if you can, to make things a little bit better for them? Stack that on top of the collectivist cultural mindset that I'm used to. There is no way that I will on purpose leave them to fend for themselves. Anyway, if your whole framework of financial planning requires that you predict some level of future expenses, and you have a wide range of $60,000 to $100,000 a year, for example, then it's near impossible to nail down a specific FIRE number or a timeline. Number 4 is the assumption on stability. FIRE assumes stable institutions, that banks and markets, governments continue functioning roughly as they did in the past. And I know the historical assumptions that we're building off of have lived through world wars and Great Depression and some really unstable times. But even then, there are a few structural elements that feel a little different this time, like the debt crisis, technological interruptions, the scale of global connectivity, and how easy information and misinformation spreads in the current age. I'm personally US based, and I think a lot of you guys are as well. And the more I think about it, having all my faith in one system is like having all of my eggs in one institutional and geographical basket. It might be riskier than it used to be. I know I just listed out all the ways our plan to retire early can fail, but it's not all doom and gloom. Change can lead to new opportunities for those who want to stay open-minded and are willing to take a risk. For example, if you're one of the few people in your world who are open to trying these new technologies, you could serve as that bridge between your field and whatever new thing is coming out. Sometimes this can mean a higher income, or at least prolonging your job stability, or at the very least, being aware of that world and keeping up with the technological changes will allow you to see what changes are coming and not be completely blindsided. We've seen this with the evolution of social media and even the internet, and it's possible it'll go that way again. Another potential opportunity is using AI to support a side income or starting this new business that you've been thinking about. If you have an idea, but previously was limited by your lack of coding skills or lack of graphic design skills, lack of bandwidth to manage social media, AI can potentially help you knock down those barriers and achieve that extra income, which in turn can enhance your financial independence journey. Thirdly, new asset classes may emerge, like digital assets or real estate related to the infrastructure of building these new technologies. Intellectual property might evolve. I'd be very curious to stay up to date on how that changes, and this may present new avenues of investing. Lastly, and I know this one is probably a little too optimistic, but you know how AI can make things a little more efficient? What if the cost of production of goods, cost of services go down? What if things become cheaper and your FIRE number is actually lower? I feel like this is not how it works. Any cost from a lower production cost is probably going to be pocketed by the company instead of being passed to the consumer. But hey, one can dream. So with all this in mind, let's move on to part 4 and talk about my adapted approach. What should we do? It is easy to be paralyzed by all the possibilities and scenarios and what ifs, but we still have to take some action. I can't give you financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. I don't know what the future holds, but this is how I'm personally adapting FIRE and tweaking my financial journey. First of all, basic good planning is still good basics. This includes good financial habits, living within your means, using a budget especially if you're starting out, automating your finances as much as possible, taking advantage of tax-advantaged accounts, dollar cost averaging into a variety of index funds. This all happens in the background and will continue to be my base case scenario. None of my other investments or strategies come at the expense of good foundational core habits. If you found me initially through Airbnb content, real estate serves as a hedge/diversification for me. It's my side thing. My main thing is this boring index fund traditional stuff that honestly I found to be much less stressful. With that said, I have 6 small tweaks that I'm adding to my planning. The first one is range planning instead of targeting a specific number. Because I can't predict how long I will have my current career and how much the future will cost and how markets will perform, I am going to be targeting a pretty wide range for my FIRE number. On the lower end, I'll have my base case. If all the FIRE assumptions hold true and society continues as we know it, then great. But I'm also going to delay fully coasting. I hit this higher number, and I'll try to do that sooner rather than later while I still can. I don't mean this in a bleak way. It gives me comfort knowing that there is optionality built into my plan instead of aiming a little too low and then running out of options in case assumptions don't hold. The second thing I'm thinking about is asset diversification beyond stocks. Traditional FIRE mostly focuses on stocks and bonds in the US market. And if you've seen my other videos, you already know that I diversify through some real estate. Beyond those, I think it's a good idea to become better versed at different asset classes. I'm thinking foreign currencies, metals, cryptocurrencies, digital or business assets, even within real estate, commercial real estate. None of this is done with any speculative get rich quick intent. And no, I'm not going to Costco to buy a gold bar today, but just as an open-minded exploration of what are the alternative assets? What's a reasonable amount? 5%, 10%? What mix? Every investment carries risk. So if you're kind of going down this path as well, I urge you to really do your research. I have personally found it incredibly difficult, especially in these assets classes, to find anything that isn't shilling something or with ulterior motive. There's just so much predatory content that preys on people's anxiety. If I end up finding good neutral sources that are in-depth enough, I'll circle back and let you guys know. My third adaptation is multiple income streams. It's been a few years since I've been working on this, and I think it's actually more important now with the age of AI, and different fields are going to be differently impacted with these technological disruptions. Having multiple ways to sustain yourself will de-risk any turbulence that is coming this way. I also think of multiple income streams as a way to just gain different skill sets as you are working towards that additional income towards your retirement savings. If you're curious what my income streams are, I've done a video before and I will link it right here. Number 4 is continuous learning. I want to keep up to date on the new technologies, if not just for sheer curiosity. Some people may also seek more formal training, often at a cost. If you're thinking about that, just make sure to vet the program and make sure it actually is worth your time. Number 5 is community building. I think on the opposite end, instead of learning about technology, I think it's worth investing into and doubling down on the very uniquely human things, whether it's in my career, my life, the ability to actually listen and connect with someone, develop trust with another person, build rapport, build communities, the ability to ethically navigate gray areas. All of these will be kind of premium human things that maybe fewer and fewer people are able to do. Relationships also become kind of a form of wealth during uncertain times. People who learn together, adapt together, and stick together have advantages over these transitional periods that no amount of money can replicate. Lastly, number 6, I'm also thinking about optionality in terms of where I live and work. I like where I am today and I freaking love this house, but I also recognize having options is so valuable. Whether it's economic opportunities, political stability, or just cost of living reasons, having geographical mobility gives me more control over my financial future. So in my planning, I have my base case of just being here locally, but also what would it look like if I were to move? And I build out different financial models for moving for a work reason to a different state, or moving to a different country altogether, All kind of more edge case scenarios, but good to think through in my planning nonetheless. I think about what are the logistics to make that happen, what are the potential costs of living and education and the cost of the move itself? How would I handle hard assets like this house or a rental property? Like things I can't move, stuff like that. I don't worry about the finer details, but in broad strokes, I want to understand what are my range of possibilities and what might those look like. Traditional FIRE says accumulate enough to opt out of the economy. My adaptive AI uncertainty era version would be to build enough financial flexibility to evolve with the economy. The goal isn't to predict a future perfectly because we can't do that. It's to be better positioned for multiple futures. To me, this is not fear or escapism or pessimism. It's really just intelligent preparation, which is the same mindset that got a lot of us interested in FIRE in the first place. Taking control of our own financial future rather than hoping it works out and praying someone will handle it. I'm curious, what do you think? How are you adapting? And what kinds of things are you considering as you're doing your financial planning? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. I hope you're having a good day, and I will talk to you again next time. Bye!